Hello and welcome to the Financial Wellness Hour. I am your host, Hirsch Serman, and I am thrilled to have you here with us on WGSN-DB, the Going Solo Network, the #1 singles talk radio station. This show is for those wanting to learn more about creating financial wellness, and we're going to look at different life cycles. We're going to explore them both financially and emotionally. As I always say on this show, your personal finances are usually not about the money, but they are rather about the emotions that are associated with your finances. And the healthier we are emotionally and the more that we prepare, the better financial decisions we tend to make. We do get fairly general in our discussion. We'd love to hear from you, though, to make it more relevant and more personal. So please do reach out. You can reach me through my website, lifecycle.financial. That's lifecycle.financial, or on YouTube, Facebook, or any of the other platforms you might be listening to us on. Whether this is your first year being single through the holidays or your 15th year, being single can be challenging. Too often, we are comparing everyone else's outside expressions to our inside expressions. And being that the world is in holiday mode, it can be that much harder. And we can be deceived by everything going on around us. It can even make the feelings that much stronger. We walk around seeing everybody happy in the mall, except for me. But the reality is quite different. In fact, in many, if not most counties across America, the #1 month for people filing divorce is January, right after the holidays. They just want to get through the holidays or don't want to ruin the holidays. Now, I know that that does not necessarily ease your feelings. It's not something that makes it easier for many people knowing that fact. But that's exactly why we planned this show for today, right in the middle of the holiday season. My guest today is Jackie Pilossoph, the creator and editor-in-chief of Divorce Girls Smiling, as well as a divorce coach, an author, podcast, and many other things. I can't get to all of them. But one of the things I do want to point out is that Jackie has created a following of well over 20,000 people. And that is amazing in itself. But 20,000 people, there's a reason behind that. And I think the larger accomplishment is this safe haven that has been created for all these people that can share their stories, get strength, get advice from others. And every day, her community is improving the lives of so many people. And I am thrilled to have you on the show. Jackie, thank you for all of that. Thank you for being on the show. And thank you in advance for all the things that you're going to share with us. So welcome. And we're going to start talking about how to enjoy the holidays. So welcome back.
Thanks so much for having me, Hirsch. Always nice to be here.
It's always great to have you. And I think this is our second or third time we've actually done like a holiday show on how to enjoy the holidays or thrive through Thanksgiving kind of thing. And, creating a brand like this, firstly, takes time. It's not something that just happens. But there's obviously something behind this. There's an energy, a passion, a story behind it. And I'm going to ask if you can share a little bit of your background and where this passion comes from.
Oh, absolutely. So I am a former broadcast journalist. I was a TV reporter, and I've also worked for the Chicago Tribune, and I was a columnist and a features reporter. And so as a writer, I went through a divorce, and, what do you get when a writer goes through a divorce? A lot of writing. So I just felt very alone and isolated when I got divorced. I had 2 young kids. It was 2007, so there really wasn't the internet like there is now. And I felt like I was on an island. I didn't have any family in town, and I felt very alone and lonely. And there was no place to go, no community that you could go to for support and to feel validated and to talk to other people. And so that's really how Divorce Girls Smiling came to be.
Now, I love the name. I think it brings a lot of hope into, somebody who's going through this. It is challenging. And, I got divorced the next year, and I remember the same thing. There didn't seem to be that many resources around. And, how do I learn from others? There's got to be somebody else who's been through this, right? But you didn't feel like there was because you felt so alone. So I love that you've brought it to the forefront and where it's gone from there. And, parts of the year are definitely more difficult than others. So why are holidays so hard when you're first getting divorced?
Well, I think you could agree with me that holidays are hard for anybody, even if you're not divorced. And you brought something up at the beginning of the show that I thought was important for people listening. And Hirsch was saying that the biggest time to file for divorce is in January. So I think there's a lot of people listening to this who are really unhappy in their marriages and they're gonna file in January. And I have to say, that's probably harder than being single during the holidays. Being unhappy in your marriage is probably harder, I think, than being newly single during the holidays. But that said, being newly single during the holidays is really brutal. It's painful. And really the theme word is alone. You just feel very alone. Everyone else has someone. You have no idea what's going on in their relationship. Everybody looks blissful and you're feeling like I'm a loser. I'm alone. I'm never going to meet anyone. And there's also a lot of stress that goes with holidays for people who aren't divorced and people who are. And, holidays bring up a lot of emotions in people, whether it's like, your parents who have passed or anything. But when you're newly single, it's very, very hard at first.
That's so true. I've had clients say to me things like, the loneliest I've ever felt is sitting across the table from my spouse. They knew that this wasn't going where they wanted. They were unhappy. They were there. And they look at this person thinking, I have a spouse. It shouldn't be this way kind of thing, right? And so I think what you're saying is so true. So what are things that stress newly separated people out? What advice do you have for someone like that?
Well, okay, so there's many stressors, I call them, that go along with the holidays. And I have to say, I have a list of like 5 stressors that I think are the most stressful for people. And I actually got this list from emails I've received from Divorce Girl Smiling followers who have told me what they're stressed about.
Right.
So I thought I would just read a couple of these stressors and then address them and tell your audience why you shouldn't be stressed about this and what you can do to alleviate the stress.
I think that would be wonderful. I think people need this because sometimes they're not even sure what's stressing them out, and that will resonate and kind of be able to name it and figure it out, right? So I love that. Please do.
All right. So the first one I came up with, I get a lot of these emails. Should I send out holiday cards? I mean, I've been sending holiday cards for 20 years and 15 of those have been when I've been divorced. But people say to me, well, it's going to be weird if like Mr. Smith isn't in the picture. Everyone's going to get my card and think, well, where's the husband? Or, you can't really address the Smith family anymore because then people go, wait, where's Mr. Smith? So I tell people the worst thing you can do is not send them because you're worried about that. The best thing you can do is send your holiday cards any way you want. There's no rules. You don't have to put a return address with your name. You can just put your address and say, love Jackie, and then your kids' names. And what sending holiday cards does is it shows everybody a couple things. First, that you're totally fine and that you're not thinking about yourself during the holidays. You're thinking about the people you sent the cards to. And that will help you in general. So, and the other thing is I tell people, like, if you need to skip a year, listen, I'm not going to be judgmental. If you're like, this year, it's just not going to happen. But in the future, you can be a single mother or dad like me for the last 15 years and send holiday cards. And really, it's a lovely thing to do because it's a giving thing to do.
And you think of others, which is always appreciated.
When somebody gets a holiday card from somebody, it makes the person feel so good. Like they thought of me. They included me on their list. And isn't that what we're all trying to do, is just make life better for people in general.
Exactly.
All right. So next stressor is holiday parties. So Hirsch, have you ever gone to holiday parties by yourself?
I have. It was a little awkward in the beginning, I will be honest.
Yeah, that was a little bit of an awkward laugh. I am the queen of going to parties, not just holiday parties, by myself, because I didn't get married till I was 35 and I was divorced again at 41. Not again, I was only divorced one. I was single again. So a couple things I wanted to tell people if you're worried about going to holiday parties yourself or just with your kids, where it's just like, you and your kids without a spouse. First of all, you're the only person who's going to make it weird. Give everyone else the benefit of the doubt. If you're invited to the party, they love you, they care about you, and they're going to not even think twice. And I've had a couple jerks who have said stuff to me, whatever, it was like one or two people. Everyone else couldn't have been nicer over the years. Another time I went to a party by myself and somebody set me up. Right there, he texted his friend and set me up with someone. Great. I ended up dating the guy for like 3 months. And really, honestly, the most stressful part about thinking about going to a holiday party is is before you go to the party. That's the biggest stress. Once you get there, you are really, I promise you, it'll be fine. A couple things. If you need to leave early, definitely, you don't have to be the life of the party and stay making just even a half an hour or an hour, you'll be glad you went. And the second thing is if you really need to skip it, like the holiday cards, don't force yourself if you're really feeling depressed. But don't not go because you're feeling so stressed.
No, I like that because, as you said, I think things happen in our mind, excuse me, that aren't happening anywhere else. And so before that party, what's going on in our mind versus when we get there and you walk in the door, you get a hug, and it just changes everything. So
that's so true. You're so worried, and you get there and all people are so happy to see you and they're smiling and they're hugging you and you're like thinking, why was I so nervous?
Right.
Okay, another one is holiday decorations. I've gotten a few emails from people saying, my husband used to put up all the decorations. I can't hang lights. I can't go get a tree. Okay, guess what my one solution is? Handyman. Okay. All you have to do is hire someone and they will do everything for you.
Right. Nobody asks who put up the decorations. They just comment on the decorations. So it doesn't matter how they get up, right?
And you can have your kids there doing, putting stuff on the tree while the handyman's there. But my advice to single women everywhere is get to be friends with a couple different handymen, have their numbers, tip them well, and you won't have anything to worry about.
I like that.
And then the last one I have is financial stress. So Hirsch, you could probably chime in on this.
Yeah.
So going through a divorce or knowing you're going to be going through one, you're probably really stressed about money and thinking, I can't buy these expensive gifts for the kids. My son wants a laptop, whatever. I believe that kids don't look at the actual gifts, but they're more in tune with opening them, the giving concept, the excitement. So you can really, even especially if you have young kids, go to the dollar store, buy a bunch of gifts, wrap it up, and even that would be okay. So I guess my point is don't stress and put pressure on yourself to spend a ton of money on gifts this year. Anything you give is good.
I want to add something because this is something I'm actually dealing a lot of my clients right now. And, one of the questions that kind of comes up, I'm going to summarize several conversations is, well, I know my ex is going to buy blah, blah, blah. Right. And my response there is, so, right. It doesn't matter what anyone else is going to do. You're just adding stress to yourself that doesn't need to be there.
Hirsch, I love
time,
that.
the time you're spending, the genuine quality of being there as a parent and being present is far more important than a gift and a thing. The thing 6 weeks later is going to be a thing, and they're not really going to remember it, and they're going to move on. But the experience of spending a holiday with their mom, their dad, that was genuine, that was engaged, that had fun, that you laughed, even if you are stressed, that becomes so much more important to them. And as you said, it's part of the experience. So I opened 6 gifts instead of 1 expensive gift. Well, there's an excitement in opening gifts, even if it's only something smaller, or something that's not a very expensive laptop or something, as your example. So I think these are things that, again, I'm having a lot of conversation with people calling me around this. And I think if you can have that attitude a little bit of, so what? That's not why I'm a parent, to give gifts, right? It changes the dynamic of that whole experience for you, I think, is a very important thing to keep in mind.
And kids don't look at price tags.
Right.
They remember the giving part. I'm telling you, go to the dollar store, wrap up a bunch of things, and just, your kids will remember that you got them gifts and that you had this celebration and that you opened gifts. And as far as you're right, Hirsch, your ex-husband getting them the expensive, bring it on, do it. That's good for your kids and better for you. You don't have to do it. There's no room for jealousy and wanting what your ex has. Get that out of your head. Just completely forget it.
100%. Absolutely. So that may lead me into my next question. Or did you have one more? Sorry.
Well, the one more might be your next question, which is feeling alone. That might be the biggest stress of any of these. People just are so afraid to be alone, especially on the actual day. So they're afraid that this year they don't have their kids on Christmas Eve. What's it going to be like sitting in my house by myself, knowing my kids are with my ex and his entire family, and I'm sitting here? And my answer is, you are going to survive.
Exactly.
And let's see, do you want me to expand on how?
I do. I want to make a quick comment on that, and then I want you to expand. But I'm going to make 2 comments probably. But the first one is, for me, as an example, it actually was not the first year that hit me, because I got divorced in the summer, right? We went into the holidays, and that holiday season, the kids were with me more than not with me. So it didn't affect me, right? And then a year later, I'd been divorced roughly 18 months at this point. That's when it hit me. All of a sudden, I was alone. Well, that was the first holiday season I'd been alone, and I wasn't really thinking about it. I'm thinking, well, I've been divorced for a while. It shouldn't hit me in the same way, right? But it was the first experience of being without my kids in the holidays. And I think that was part of it.
Well, I think you can find joy no matter what. So that was going to be my advice for these feelings. You can find joy if you're sitting home, like with your dog. You can find joy in binge watching. Like right now, I just started watching The Sopranos again. I haven't seen it in 20 years. It's the best show. It's better the second time. I literally cannot even function. That's how much I look forward to watching The Sopranos. You can find joy in food. And I don't mean to tell people you should binge eat 50 cookies. Although I've done that before. But you can find joy in baking. But you know what the biggest joy is for people, Hirsch, is giving. So I've heard stories of people who were really depressed. And how did they get out of their depression? They went and worked at a soup kitchen, or they made a large donation somewhere, or they went and visited a senior community and brought them gifts, or they got together with somebody who needed a job and helped them put their resume together and helped them learn how to interview. If you give of yourself during the holidays, especially, you will feel so good, like you matter on this earth. And not to mention all the good you're doing, but it's good for you too to give. And it will take away these feelings of loneliness and depression and isolation. I really, really believe that.
I agree. I think sometimes we think we in the worst situation of everyone, and then we start to give, or we see, a soup kitchen as an example. There are people that are worse off than us in, the blessings that we have in our life. And sometimes it brings a little perspective. Sometimes it will actually, and hopefully, create more gratefulness of what you do have, because that's what I think people really should focus on, is being grateful that, not everything is perfect in your life, but it's not perfect in everybody's life, right? So how do I move away from the negative thoughts, or those thoughts of loneliness or inadequacy potentially because I'm alone and no one else is, it seems, in the world, as opposed to all the things that you do have in your life? And, there's an article that you wrote that hit your website yesterday. I think people will benefit tremendously from that, because you identify, and I had never really thought about it this way. I was like, loneliness is loneliness. You're lonely, right? But why are you lonely? And being able to understand that, I think, will help you work on changing that as well, and I thought that was a very powerful piece. And we are running way over on Take Your Break. So do me a favor, if you would. How can people reach you? What is the easiest way to get in touch with you? And then we're going to go to a break.
Absolutely. So divorcedgirlsmiling.com will take you anywhere you want to go. Podcast, mobile app, articles, videos, great trusted professional resources, anything you need.
And I recommend, there is tremendous resources and information on there. I do suggest people go join the community. There's a Facebook group, there's the website, there's a lot more to it. And we will be right back. Thank you, Jackie. Stay tuned. Hello, and welcome back to the Financial Wellness Hour. This is Hirsch Serman, your host. We are on WGSN-DB, the Going Solo Network. Jackie Pilossoph is joining us today. She is the creator and editor-in-chief of Divorced Girls Smiling. She is podcast. She is an author. She is a divorce coach and many other things. So I am very excited to have you here. We're talking about being happy through the holidays and how do you do that. I do want to recap a few things, and I know I didn't get them all down while we were speaking, but I am going to recap some of my notes here as we were talking. You did share your story, which I think was a very a launching pad, if I can call it, to creating such an amazing community that you have, and how Divorced Girls Smiling came into being and the growth of that, which has been tremendous, and how people really get, I think everybody can get something different out of it, whether it's a professional resource, whether it's information, whether it's strength, whether it's advice, whether it's, I just need to share my story. There are just so many things that people can do through your community. We spoke about why the holidays are so hard, and we spoke mostly about the first year when you're alone, or the first time you're alone. But I think, it can be a year later, 3 years later as well. I think a lot of that applies. We spoke about holiday parties, which I felt a little, gave you my little awkward laugh, because yes, I have been to them. I had also thought in my head before them, why am I going? And was grateful that I went. Sometimes you even reconnect with people with, in a way with yourself that you would never do just staying at home. We spoke a little bit about your article. I just mentioned it briefly on loneliness, and being able to understand why you are lonely, I think will help people a lot as well. And then one of the great things that you were running through were those 5 stresses. And, sometimes should I act, should I not? Being able to help people, sending those cards, thinking of other people, whatever it might be. You don't have to shortchange yourself. You can do all the things that you want to do. My very first blog I ever wrote was about 7 or 8 years ago. And originally I called it Divorce is Awesome, right? And people loved the content, but they hated the name, which you can understand. But the bottom line was, it really was reconnecting with yourself and the opportunity that comes. And you don't have to shortchange yourself or stop doing the things you enjoy just because you're single. Sometimes there's a nice opportunity that comes with that. So those are all of the things that I had recapped and I thought were important. And I know we covered more. But, one of the things a couple of things I want to speak about is I'm going in, I'm lonely, I need to cope, so to speak. And there are good ways and bad ways. I'm going to ask you to talk a little bit about some of the unhealthy ways that people might cope with the holidays and things that, just to highlight that.
Okay, so before I do that, I just want to back up here. You wrote an article called Divorce is Awesome.
I did. I changed it to Perspective is Everything is what it ended up being called. Well, and I started off, it really was like, basically my life had died this excruciating death and I didn't know what to do and I couldn't sleep, I couldn't think. And then I realized there was an opportunity and it became like a top 10, reconnecting with friends, reconnecting with yourself. We lose ourselves in a divorce or in a marriage sometimes because we are catering to our children. We have a spouse. We have all these other things that we forget about ourselves. So those are the kind of things that it ran through. Yeah.
Well, the reason it resonated with me is because my business is called Divorced Girls Smiling. And people might say to themselves, well, why would I be smiling? I'm getting divorced. And it's really a similar concept. I mean, yeah, you're not going to be smiling the first day, but the goal is to get to that place in your life where you say the divorce was awesome. It turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me. So I think that there's 2 kinds of people listening to this. People who they were the ones who wanted the divorce and people who were maybe blindsided or their spouse wanted the divorce. And I want to tell people that either way, divorce is awesome and you're going to be smiling. That is really true. Not right away, but even people who were left, you will come to realize that your spouse did you a favor. Because if you make really good choices in life during and after your divorce, you will reap the benefits and you'll have a happy life and everything really will work out wonderful and you'll be a stronger, better person. And you may never really know why it even happened, but you'll be in a good place. That's the goal of all of it.
100%. It really becomes an opportunity. And in many ways, if not always, it's really up to you to make it happen. And that I think becomes so important because we can, misery loves company, as they say, right? We can dwell in it and we can find all the negative people out there that are still bitter, or we can find all the people that have really moved on with their life, enjoying their life, fulfilled with their life, and become one of them.
All right. So that's like a perfect segue into what you asked me, which was, what are some unhealthy coping mechanisms? And it's funny, I wrote an article once called Getting Divorced, Don't Do Anything Stupid. And it was like about, all these bad coping behaviors. And so people listening probably, you're thinking, I'm sure you're on the same page here. Drinking too much is horrible. Now, I don't want to be a hypocrite. I drink, I love my wine, but you can't drink away your problems. That's only going to not only not help, but make it worse. Because when you drink, you start to get emotional. You might text people you wouldn't ordinarily text. You might call, leave messages, or you might just cry yourself to sleep, which isn't a bad thing. But maybe if you weren't drinking so much, you would not have that level of being that upset. Right. So drinking is one. And then Hirsch, you just touched on another really good one. Stay away from toxic relationships. So if there's somebody in your life who you're hanging around and they're making you feel badly about yourself, you just don't like yourself around them. Like I remember once, right after my divorce, I dated this guy and I never felt good about myself anytime I was around him. And that's actually happened to me in female relationships too. Like with friends, I'll be hanging around this one girl and I always feel like I'm not as pretty as her. She just doesn't make me feel smart. I don't feel good about myself around her or in a relationship. So get rid of those people. You don't have to have this dramatic falling out. Just stop calling them, stop hanging around. And the best thing to do is start hanging around people who make you feel good about yourself. Join the Divorce Girl Smiling Facebook group and you'll feel good about yourself. If you post something on there, you'll get 15 responses saying, I understand, I've been where you are. So try to surround yourself with good people.
And I know even from your group how like these small groups of friends and support groups have kind of evolved from your group as well. There are so many people on there that can help you. And one of the things I like is I know several people, quite a few who are on your group that started off when they joined asking for advice and help and were kind of the Debbie Downer, if I can call it that. And now one of the things they love about going on your Facebook group is because they can help others. They've been through it. They're in a better place. And that is their joy now in being able to give it back, and be able to help others.
Do you know, over the summer, a girl from the group sent me a picture of, I want to say between 5 and 10 women from the Divorce Girl Smiling group that took a vacation together. I almost want to say it was in Memphis. So if there's something you're not telling me, Hirsch, let me know. But they went to Memphis and they held up these DGS balloons and took a picture. It made me feel like I have chills in my face. I was almost cried because I thought, look what I've created. These women went on a trip together. They were from all over the country, and all they had in common was this Facebook group.
That's amazing. That really is
unbelievable.
I'm going to quickly throw out a plug for Going Solo Network because they also have actually a singles travel. So get on Going Solo Media, get goingsolonetwork.com, and you'll see a lot of services. And that's one of the things that they actually have on this, which is wonderful. So, and I do want to point out something which I think, we've become such a on-demand society. I think in some ways, skip intro has really hurt a lot of people because we need and want everything now. And as people, it takes time to adjust, right? And we just got to realize that. And sometimes we're doing great, and then you standing, in the middle of the road, and all of a sudden you start crying, and you don't know why these emotions or where they came from. And we do need to understand that, do people have slips or things like that? Absolutely. But let's move beyond that, and let's look at those positive things. And the more positive people you're hanging out with, the more you can reach out, the more you can get beyond that very quickly, or hopefully avoid them because you have these people to support you. So I think all of those are very important. And they're going to bring you to my next question, which is the healthy people, the people in a good place. How are they going to help you what are some of the healthy activities they might help you get through the holidays with?
Well, okay, I'll answer that in a minute, but I wanted to say one other thing. You just touched on something because of Google, and everybody wants everything now.
Right.
Like if people could, they would Google, Siri, how do I get over my divorce? Okay, you do this, this, and this, and now you're over it.
Tonight, by the way, you're going to add
because people don't have patience anymore. Because I notice it in my teenage kids. They want everything right this minute. And people have to understand that getting a divorce is a process. It's a process that could take you 5 years. Now, I'm not saying you're going to be miserable every second of the 5 years. That's not what I'm saying at all. In fact, most of it's going to be happy, empowering, feeling independent, feeling like, wow, I'm so proud of myself, meeting new people, doing things you never thought you would do. That's all plays into it. But there will be feelings and nights that you're really sad and still mourning your divorce well into over a year. And if it wasn't, you wouldn't even be a normal person.
Right.
I've been divorced 15 years and I still get sad sometimes thinking about my ex-husband and the life we could have had or whatever. And I'm in a really happy relationship even that's better than anything, but the sadness really still will stay with you. And it's a process and you have to get through it and be patient.
And I think it's so important to give the appropriate attention to what has happened. And I say appropriate. You married, that's an enormous thing in somebody's life. You maybe have children. That's an enormous thing in people's lives that, are not just that now you've got a million people around and you don't have space or time. These are usually and should be like your children should be bringing you enormous joy in your life. And so, as you said, like sometimes there are thoughts as to what could have been, or sometimes people are going to say should have been. Give it the right attention, the appropriate attention, because you know what? It does have an effect on you. And if you squash it down and you hold all that stress inside you, it's not good. You're going to have high blood pressure, all the rest that comes with that. So give it the right, the reverence, if I can call it that, as to what has happened. But it doesn't mean that you don't move on. And, I used to have somebody shared this with me when I was going through a divorce. They said, there's a 10-second rule. And I'm like, I have no idea what that is. Like, I thought that was like, when they ride the bulls and, 8 seconds. And they said, no, the 10-second rule is if you hit something negative or something emotional, think about it for 10 seconds and then you move on. Give it the time that it needs, or give it time because it is important, and then you move on. And that was helpful for me because it gave me a little pause, and then I could go back to, recovery from where I was, doing something healthy, reaching out to somebody. And I thought that was a very helpful thing for me to be able to, yes, this is real. Okay, let's move on and not shortchange it.
So in Kabbalah class, I just took a Kabbalah class. They call that, it's the same thing. Take a breath, pause and take a breath.
And you know what? Sometimes we need that breath and that pause because, we can go down a good road and a bad road. And sometimes it's sometimes easier to go down that bad road. So kind of pause, step back, think about it. Don't have to respond right away.
Absolutely.
Any final kind of thoughts around the holidays?
Okay. I knew you were going to ask me that. So I was thinking, what would I say? And I came up with something great.
Yeah.
For those of you who are sitting around over the holidays and really thinking, I'm so depressed or I'm so angry, any emotion you're having that you feel like you don't know what to do and you already tried to take a breath and it didn't work and you can't get this anger out of your head or resentment or fear or stress or sadness, whatever it is, get a piece of paper and start journaling. And either go to the computer and write down what you're feeling, what you're thinking, why you're upset, and get specific. And then you will feel, this is what journaling does for people. It makes you feel validated, like you just told someone your issue. Instead of calling your girlfriend and crying, which you actually could do, you could just journal it yourself and you'll get the same satisfaction because you'll be like, okay, I've been heard. I wrote down, this is the clarity I have now of how I'm feeling at this point. So I thought that would be helpful.
I'm going to share a personal story, which I don't often do on the show. Being a cold, heartless MBA CPA type, right? I thought all this stuff was kind of, weird hippie stuff, and somebody suggested to me and they said, put your thoughts down. And I was like, and I remember a couple times thinking, should I? Nah, I'm not going to do that. And it literally 2-3. And then I thought, you know what? Why not? Like, let me give it a go, right? And it became so incredibly helpful for all the reasons you said. And then there was something for me internally, like sometimes I didn't even know why I was feeling or what I was feeling. And being able to put that down, and you're amazed at where that journaling goes, right? The thoughts and what comes out. And it brings such a clarity sometimes to things.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
absolutely.
Going through a divorce, I do suggest, if it's appropriate for you, to speak to a professional, whether it's a divorce coach, which is different to a therapist. But sometimes you unearth things that are so important for you to talk through with a therapist that you would never have done, and catapults your recovery. And it is so incredibly helpful to be able to do it. So I think those are wonderful closing thoughts, especially because I've experienced that, and I've seen, from somebody who poo-pooed it kind of thing, and to really relied on it and felt the benefits coming through. I think that's a great final thought to wrap it up. So thank you for that. Thank you for all of it that you've shared your insights on. I do encourage everyone, reach out to Jackie, go onto the Facebook group, go onto her webpage, and also just look for the information that's out there that she has and the support. And as I said earlier, Jackie has created an incredible community for people that are now taking vacations together, which I think is incredible. So Jackie, one more time, how can people get in touch with you and get some of these articles and all the information that you have out there?
So anything Divorced Girl Smiling related, go to divorcedgirlsmiling.com. Really simple.
I suggest that everybody goes there right after the show. I am Hirsch Serman, your host for the Financial Wellness Hour. Please reach out to me through my website, lifecycle.financial. That's lifecycle.financial. You can reach out to me for questions, or if you have questions for Jackie and you'd like to use me as your conduit, please do. Thank you to CC Schatz, who puts everything behind the scenes and makes it so seamless and easy for me to have a conversation. And I appreciate all that you do. And I look forward to everybody joining me in a couple of weeks. Have a wonderful holiday season. It can be done. It should be done. Have a great week. Thank you.